I'm trying to coexist, exist. Yeah, I'm trying to coexist, exist. I'm trying to coexist.
You wake up, you drink coffee, you sit in traffic, you clock in, you work hard, maybe harder than what your parents and your grandparents did. You miss your kid's soccer game, your science project, you couldn't go out for dinner with your wife, all for a deadline. You skip the vacation to save for a house that keeps getting more expensive. You follow the rules. You play the game in which you think you're going to win. And yet at the end of the month, the math just doesn't add up, no matter how hard you tried. You are told that if you're struggling, it is simply a moral failing. You just didn't hustle enough. You didn't try hard. You didn't work hard enough to compete. Or you perhaps bought too many lattes or lunch. And the worst thing, the belief that you aren't providing value. But what if I told you that your struggle isn't a glitch in the system? What if I told you that your struggle is the fuel for the system? We are living in an era of economic gaslighting. You are being told that you're free, that you live in a free society, free will, free choices, free consequence, while you are being engineered into a state of permanent servitude. This isn't a conspiracy theory. That's not what the Ethics Guild podcast is about. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a business model. It has a name, it has a history, and it has been with us for hundreds of years. And to make matters worse, it has a legal team. Today on the Ethics Guild podcast, we are going to tear down the wall that has blinded us for many years. We are going to look at what divides us, which is something called Social Darwinism. We're also going to be talking about the lobbying complex and its effects, and also the myth of the American dream. We are also going to name the names of the Untouchables, the ones that commit crime and justice does not apply to them, or the law, the executives that crashed the economy and walked away with millions of taxpayers' money. But I want you to reflect on something, and more importantly, in that reflection, what happened if we just decided to just stop feeding the machine, the model? It's time to wake up, America. Let's start. To understand the psychology of greed, we must understand what is social Darwinism. Have you ever asked the question of why your rent keeps increasing and the wages or your pay keeps low? We have to go back to the 19th century to understand this. We have to talk about a man named Herbert Spencer. Most people think that Charles Darwin became famous for the phrase survive or survival of the fittest, but he didn't say this. Herbert Spencer did. While Darwin was talking about tortoises and finches and birds adapting to a particular island, a unique island on the Galapagos, Spencer took that biological idea and contrasted it into a sociopathic philosophy called Social Darwinism. And what is Social Darwinism? We need to understand its core. To make it simple, let's put it this way. If you are rich, it is because you are genetically and morally superior. If you are poor, it is because you're weak, lazy, and unfit to survive. Therefore, helping the poor goes against nature. The philosophy is we should let them starve, die, so the species, or the human species in this case, gets stronger in society. This sounds monstrous, right? Machiavellian, I would say. Like something a cartoon villain would say. But I want you to take a close look at our corporate modern language. And I'm going to dissect this so you can have a broader understanding of what you live every day. And perhaps you haven't noticed. We have this mindset that only the hustler survive. Dog eats dog. And that we always have to be trimming the fat. This philosophy didn't die in the 1800s. The only thing it did, it just put a customized suit. It labeled itself elegantly. It created a persona. It became the bedrock of America's capitalism. The wealthy convinced themselves that their greed was actually a virtue. Why should they share? Because they are the ones on the top of the food chain. And within that greed, why give the good portions? Why not just give crumbs to pretend and to see what survives within that poor environment? Do not mistake that the rich are hoarding resources. What they're doing is allocating capital efficiently. You are being exploited. Do you feel this way when you work? For them, you are an unskilled labor, replaceable. Just think about these stats. Only 2% of people have careers. 98% work jobs. Do you work a job? Do you have a career? Prove it if you have a career. Let's think about your own workplace, your job. When they lay off 1,000 people or so, they do it to boost the stock price. They need to keep the investors happy. But let's think about what is the excuse. Market forces, efficiency. There's a label to each one of these excuses. That is social Darwinism, the elimination of the weak, of the replaceable, of the things that are not going to survive and needs to be thrown in the river of oblivion. It transforms human suffering into a math problem. Everything needs to be calculated via the top of the food chain. Think about it. Why will you think about the weak when you're scaling up to be the strongest? It tells you that if you can't survive on minimum wage or a $15 an hour salary in a city where rent is $2,000, that is your biological failure. It's your fault for being weak, for not being creative, for not climbing up, for not being part of the elite. The excuse is that you are that biological failure, not their greed system. And in the process, they always want you to be responsible for their decisions, or at least make you feel in this way. What I'm trying to say here is that if we accept this worldview, those above wash their hands of guilt. They can sleep at night in their mansions because they genuinely believe they belong there. They have earned it, but you didn't. And that you also deserve to be down there. It's a psychopathic behavior that we have done very little to contrast. Have you faced this experience ever in your workplace? Have you been laid off and told that you had to let go, a department has to be wiped out? Leave your comment. Tell me how was your experience. And what do you learn from it? And do you blame yourself? So what does the psychology of greed also do? To protect itself, it has to create the legal shield. And let's understand this. Laws protects capital, not people. I'm going to say this again. The laws protect capital, not people, as much as we want to believe the contrary. But think about it. Philosophy alone isn't enough to keep the 99% down. You need a weapon to control the crowds. And what is that weapon? The legal system. The legal system that we exist today. There is a saying, which I find very sarcastic, of course. The law, in its majestic equality, forbids the rich and the poor to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, or to steal bread. What are your thoughts about this phrase? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I find it burlesque and quite humorous. But in reality, this is all a sarcasm. And why is it a sarcasm? Because the law is not equal. It wasn't created to be equal. The American law system was tailored, stitch by stitch, to protect property, not people. If this was the case, you will be protected today. Do you feel protected? Do you feel that the law favors you versus a corporation? I'm just going to take an example. Let's look at the bail system, just to prove a point. If a rich man and a poor man gets charged of the same crime, the rich man writes a check and goes home to prepare for his defense in his comfort, at home, safe, able to think with his attorneys the strategy to win his case. The poor man sits in jail, in a cage, for months, loses his job, loses his apartment, and eventually pleads guilty just to get out and restart again. If we call that restarting, that isn't justice. That is a lawful fraud to protect the rich and not the poor. And because of that there's no equality in the system. This is a ransom. Think about who created the law. The gatekeepers of yesterday are the same gatekeepers of today. And I want to give you another example. Let's look at wage theft versus a bank robber. Yes, I'm going a little radical here, but I want to stick to a point. If you go to a gas station and you steal $100 from the register, the police will come with guns waiting to point at you, drawn at you, and more than likely you go to prison. You deserve it. Committed a crime. But if your boss steals $100 from your paycheck by forcing you to walk off the clock or do extracurricular activities, or things don't pertain to your department or responsibility, which happens millions of times to millions of Americans every single day, the police will tell you, well, this is a civil matter. Go to court and fight for it. Do you see the difference? Let me know what you think about this example. Is it clear for you? Do you see where the inequality exists? And I want to stick to statistics. What does the statistics shows us? That wage theft accounts for more lost money annually than all robberies, burglaries, and even auto thefts combined. But yet, nobody goes to jail for it. I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like. I was a district manager for a company in which they pay salary. Indirectly, they will force you to work until you complete deadline, sometimes going from 12 to 13 to 14 hours a day. And this was just with higher executive. This was also for management. The place was unsafe. I'm actually going to post some of those pictures so you can see how unsafe the place was. And also the way they received shipment was very unorganized. So the payroll didn't match the operations. So it was impossible to stick payroll and complete the operations and have enough budget to provide customer service. When I got out of this company, which I'm not going to mention, there was a class lawsuit to which I registered because I wasn't the only one that felt affected by this company's abuse. Within a year, I was able to recover all that money. I just want to tell you guys, if you're a manager, if you're a leader and you work salary, you have the right to get into a civil lawsuit so you can get paid all the hours that you are owed. Please don't be discouraged. Unite with others because others are going with the same similar problems or facing the same problems. Unity creates force. And this takes me to this paradox. Why these individuals don't go to jail? Why are they immune to going to jail? Because the laws were written by the people who own the companies, the gatekeepers. They created a qualified immunity for capitalism, and it makes perfect sense. Why will you shoot yourself in the foot? A corporation can poison a river, crash the economy, and kill workers with unsafe conditions. And the penalty is only a fine, a cost of doing business. Cynical, right? Machiavellian. I will even call it a terrorist act to human society, a poison. But if you did these things, you, the one that doesn't belong to that 1%, you will be probably on the death row, considering to be a plague that needs to be exterminated. This leads me to the Ivy League corruption, because who is committing these crimes and getting away with it? And what is the mask? What is the social mask they wear? Is the polite corruption, pretending to be who they're not. We have these images in our heads of thugs being in dark alleys, but the most dangerous people in America don't wear masks. They're not in dark alleys. They wear Brooks Brothers suits, walk in Wall Street. They have degrees from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all the Ivy Leagues you can think of. Not everyone. Let me make sure I'm very clear. There's a lot of honest people there too that fight these systems. But the vast majority do. They are involved and they know what they're doing. Which leads me to talking about the Ivy League shield. There is a cultural myth to understand this, that if someone wants to enter an elite university, we consider them better than us, smarter than us, and more moral. They have higher values. That's the perception. We also believe they're more capable. This is why we give them all these high rank responsibilities. But this is the ultimate camouflage. These institutions are not just schools. They are the networking hub for the ruling class. This is how they associate with one another. They get to know how things work so they can keep working in the same environment. They teach a very specific curriculum. How to extract wealth without looking like a monster. Very funny, right? They learn the language of corporate social responsibility and ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and government. They learn how to play the rules and speak the language and make you believe. They learn how to smile while they sign the order to outsource 5,000 jobs. They pretend that they care about you, but in reality, all they care is about themselves and their social net. Have you ever seen any billionaires and millionaires in your neighborhood restructuring a system? No, right? So why do you believe them when they're in a corporate setting talking? There's a big difference between what you say and what you do, and a person should be judged for what they do, not what they say. The question is, why do we keep trusting them? Why do we keep trusting these CEOs? Because we are trained to respect the credentials. We have been brainwashed to do this automatically. When a CEO goes on TV with a Harvard MBA or any Ivy League MBA or PhD and explains why he has to raise the price of life-saving machine by 500%, or medicines at a 200% increase, we think, or most think, he must know something I don't know. But the reality, no, he doesn't. He just knows how to make greed sound like economics. Do the math. Just do your math, and you will see that what I'm telling you is right. The elites move in a different world. They don't worry about police, the FBI. They don't worry about rent. They don't worry about healthcare. But you do, right? And because they are detached from your reality, they are capable of immense cruelty because they don't know what it is to be in your shoes. And they don't want to know either. They're too comfortable in their safety network. That's like the Greek gods in the Olympus. Why would they have to go down and be interested in the mortal's life? But let's get this clear. It's not that they hate you. They don't even think about you at all, which is more frightening. Do you think about an ant all day? You're just a simple number in a spreadsheet. You are replaceable. And Ivy Leagues optimize how to teach this as a spreadsheet and how to convince you that they know better for your life. So what does this create? Recreate a society of untouchables. Especially at the top, you become untouchable. And let's think about who stayed out of jail to give you examples. You want proof? Let's look at the scoreboard. Let's go back to 2008, the financial crisis. Millions of Americans lost their homes. Retirement funds were completely wiped out. The global economy collapsed because of fraud. They knew they committed fraud. They were stealing. They lied. Pure, unadulterated fraud. My question is, how many major Wall Street CEOs went to jail? The answer is 0. None. Not one person went to jail. I'll give you a few examples. Dick Fuld, CEO of Lehman Brothers. They call him the gorilla. He drove Lehman Brothers into the ground with reckless bets on toxic mortgages. He earned nearly $500 million in compensation while the bank was rotting due to his decisions. When Lehman collapsed, triggering the global meltdown, did Dick Fuld go to jail? No. The answer is simple. No, he didn't. What he did was he sold his mansion in Florida for a fortune. And guess what? He started a consulting firm. He's still rich and he's still operating. The government decided that he was grossly negligent, but he wasn't a criminal. I want you to think about this example. If this is not a crime, what would the guy that steals at a Marshall store be called then? I want you to reflect on that for a second. I'm going to give you another example. Angelo Mozilo, CEO of Countrywide Financial. This is the man who popularized the subprime mortgage. He knew the loans were bad. He knew them from the very beginning. In emails, so we can understand how aware he was. In emails, he called his own products toxic, not good. He settled for the SEC for $67 million. Sounds like a lot, right? Not when you make hundreds of millions. Selling the stock before it crashed. And get this, it doesn't stop there. It gets even better. Countrywide, the company, paid $20 million of his fine. He didn't see a day in jail in his lifetime. Wouldn't you want to have this experience if you got in trouble and you committed fraud? Although I think, and I believe that if you commit a fraud like this at a high level or a low level, you should still be incarcerated and face justice. It's the only way we can change the accountability system we have. Nobody gets treated, or everyone gets treated in the same way. I'll give you another example. The Sackler family, Purdue Pharma to be more specific. Let's move a little past 2008. Let's talk about the opioid crisis. The Sacklers aren't just rich. They are the high society. They have their names in museums at Harvard and Law. Prestigious, right? They are doctors, attorneys. They marketed OxyContin as non-addictive while knowing it was destroying communities. 500,000 Americans died due to this decision. I will call that genocide. Let me know what you think. Is it genocide? Did they go to prison? Is the question. No. What they did is they used their high-priced lawyers to bankrupt the company. They shield their personal fortunes and settle. Two things that never change is that they're still billionaires and they are still free. What do you think they deserve after having $500 million 500,000 Americans died. Do you think they need to face justice? And last but not least, one of my favorites when it comes to corrupt CEOs, Dennis Muhlenberg, CEO of Boeing, the airplane company or aircraft company. 346 people died in two 737 MAX crashes because Boeing put profits over safety, and he hid software flaws from pilots, not only putting in danger people, but his own employees. To our surprise, Muhlenberg was fired, as he should. But what was his punishment besides being fired? Instead, he walked away with $60 million in stock and pension benefits. What do you get when you get fired? A 6 months package and paid health care? You don't walk away with millions of dollars, right? Besides, you didn't even kill people to start the process. Your decisions didn't kill people. Give you a good example of a bus driver. If you were a bus driver and you crash the bus and kills people because he was negligent, he goes to prison for manslaughter. But if a CEO does it, he gets a golden parachute and is set free and walks away a millionaire once more. Boeing learned the lesson of sticking with CEOs that know about engineering and not about Wall Street strategies. What I'm trying to emphasize with these examples is the double standard. This creates a two-tier justice system. For the poor, the law is a cage. For the elite, the law is a negotiation. And trust me, they have enough to negotiate, while the poor can't afford it. What do you think about this double standard? Leave your comments. But we ask, why is this allowed? Can these CEOs walk away with fortunes and no criminal record? We also have to understand, what does the shadow government looks like? And we have to understand, what does lobbying and the interpreter looks like in a government system? How do they stay out of jail? You ask yourself, like, oh my God, everyone knows they committed a crime. It's simple. They bought the referees, the gatekeepers, as I said before. This is why I want to focus on the lobbying industrial complex. In 2024 alone, corporations spent over $4.2 billion on lobbying. Staggering amount, correct? They could have given that money to their employees if they wanted to see their well-being or growth. But you ask yourself, why? Why so much money on lobbying? Because it has the best return on investment in the world. If you're going to bet on something, this is where you bet. Think about it. If you spend $10 million in a tax loophole, and that loophole saves you $1 billion, you just made 10,000% in profit. I'm going to give you an example, Citizens United. I call it the death blow. In 2010, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations are people and money is speech. I want to repeat that again. Corporations are people and money is speech. That means they have rights, just like you and me. Now, politicians don't work for you anymore. They work for their donors. They are just simple interpreters. You vote for them thinking that they speak your language, thinking that they're going to have the best interests for you and the community and the well-being of all Americans. But once they get to DC, they sit in their nice office. They translate your needs, the information you provide during their campaigns, into corporate profits. What I'm trying to say is that they sell us out. Think about it. You want lower healthcare costs? What the politicians here is, let's protect insurance profits. You want clean air? What our politician here is deregulation for oil companies. And there is a revolving door. I want to explain what that revolving door looks like, because it gets worse. 50% of retiring senators, they become lobbyists. They get paid millions to use their connections to help their new corporate masters. I must say, it's a very close, tight loop, a club, and you and I are not in it. I want you to see how the psychology of greed and power has corrupted everything and anything. But one of the things that you see and you get to see day by day, which I call it the American nightmare, the peaks of party distractions that happen at work, the little meals they provide for completing a profit or reaching a goal. Because at the end of the day, the corruption trickles down to your desk, to your area of work. Let's say you work about 60 hours a week, and perhaps you probably have even 2 jobs or 1 job and a side hustle. You save, let's say, $50,000 to your company in a quarter, and your reward is 2 slices of pizza and a good job email or a little pat in the back, and yet the CEO gets a $10 million bonus. In 1965, the CEO to worker pay ratio was 21 to 1%. 21 to 1. In 2025, the ratio is 285 to 1. Do the math. It's outrageous, correct? The question is, did CEOs get 200 times smarter to earn this tremendous increase in ratio? But as I showed you before, they're 200 times more corrupted than smarter, because at the end they get caught. The problem is they go immune. They don't face justice. Do they work 200 times harder? No, because they rigged the compensation committees. They have them in their pockets. And I want you to think about when you are up for a raise, the 3% raise myth, right? They tell you we can only afford a 3% raise increase this year. Inflation is 4%. That literally means that you took a pay cut. You're losing, but they gaslight you. Oh, you did a tremendous job. You went above and beyond. They give you examples of all these things that you did so you can be grateful for what they have given you. You see how they use, or psychology is used here to fool you. They use corporate jargons like family. We are families. We're friends, to manipulate your loyalty. But when they lay off, do you believe they have your back? And it's very familiar to hear we are a family, but no, you're not. You don't lay off your sister or your mother or your father or your brother or your son or a friend or a daughter because earnings were missed by a penny. This creates learned helplessness. You feel exhausted, not only because you work those long hours, but you're really exhausted because you're working, or let's pretend that work is running. You're running on a treadmill that someone else is controlling at their will. They keep you just poor enough that you can quit, but yet just comfortable enough that you don't revolt or start your own revolution. But there's always an option, because the question is, if the system is manipulating you, what could you do to contrast that or to create some sort of equality? Most people have, and we've seen this when they use a radical decision such as a general strike. Now take a breath, because I'm going to tell you of something that the elites, the corporations, are terrified that you will figure out. Think about this. They have the money. They have the police, they have the media, but one thing that we have is the labor. I want you to picture this. This is hypothetical. I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, but I want you just to picture this. What happens if the country stops working for 5 days? Not just a protest on the weekend and then things dies out. I mean a full cessation of labor, because we know how far protest goes. It has very little effect, and it will take years for those effects to happen if it promotes changes. Think about this. No trucks move food, no baristas pour coffee, no nurses check charts, no Amazon packages get delivered, no data centers are maintained. The first thing that you will see on day 1 is that the stock market will crash. There's going to be panic in the boardrooms. By day 3, we're going to see how supply chains break. The billionaires are going to start losing billions of dollars by the hour. Investors are going to start removing their money. By day 5, the system collapses. And to be honest, the rich can't eat money. They cannot drive their yachts without a crew. Their real power is just an illusion. It relies entirely on your compliance, on the people's compliance. And we have seen this before. I'm going to give you an example. In 1934, longshoremen shut down the entire West Coast. The police shot at them. The media called them communists. But they didn't move. That strike built the middle class. I want you to remember this. That move built the middle class. The American dream wasn't given to us by the benevolent billionaires. It was taken by workers who refused to work until they got a fair deal. Have you done that for yourself? Have you stood up for things to change? And it's okay to be afraid, because I'm pretty sure those men were afraid. But at the end, they made the change necessary to bring at least some sort of dignity to the worker. And what is the way out? I believe that the biggest solution is unity, because to break the wheel, we need to learn how to end the division that keeps us disunited. They want you, or they need the division of people by race, gender, generation, origin, background, age, boomers versus Gen Z, black versus white, rural versus urban. This is just a distraction, ladies and gentlemen, because in reality, there are only two classes: the people that work for a living and the people that own the things you work on. If you work for a paycheck, you have more in common with a struggling farmer in Ohio or a barista in New York than you do with Elon Musk or the Vanderbilts. We need class consciousness. We have to start following the money. We need to learn accountability for ourselves. We need to ban lobbying, period. No negotiation about this. Straight end it. It's what's poisoning everything in the system. And the worst thing, it's legal and it's allowed to bribe openly. We need to overturn Citizens United. We need a constitutional amendment that says money is not speech. We need ranked choice voting so we aren't stuck with the lesser of two evils. Think about this. Every time we vote for a president, do they really convince you? Do you really investigate what they're proposing? Are those proposals the best for the people's interest, regardless of their political parties? We need to rediscover the power of no and stop being convinced with an illusional speech. We need to be more united, not only in the workplace, but as a community, as in society. Discuss our salaries. It is legal, no matter what your bosses says in the workplace. It's not a crime to talk about your paycheck. Stop tolerating the pizza party illusion, the breadcrumbs that you are fed, the fear factors they built. Demand the profit share. Because if you work hard and you make money for any sort of corporation, that's what you deserve if you work hard enough and you hustle for them. With this, I'm not saying that every corporation is bad. There are good ones out there, but I believe they're less than 1%. My only fear, if people become united and are against the system and they want to change all these loopholes that keeps us prisoner into a system that only makes those in power more powerful, is the development of AI. And why I say this, I'm not opposed to evolution, but if your label was easily replaced by AI, they will do it in a heartbeat and you wouldn't have a possibility to work. Although, think about this. I want to leave you with this question too. There's a lot of AI CEOs that are talking about that there's going to be jobs that are the AI is going to replace jobs with other jobs. But when you ask them, what are those jobs? They don't even know what that's going to look like. What does this mean? The bottom line is they just want to replace workers so they don't have to pay salaries. That's what scares me the most. And the reason why I'm afraid, because think about this. Let's look at the pattern of behaviors. For centuries, they have built very high walls that are inaccessible for you. They arm themselves with lawyers, lobbyists, and laws to protect themselves. But one thing they don't have is 330 million of us, and there are only a few thousands of them. We are rich by the numbers. We just don't know it because it doesn't feel that way. The American dream isn't dead. It was just stolen. It was grabbing. It was grabbed by those opportunists. But it's time the people takes it back. Not by asking for permission, but by realizing that they are the engine. And without the people, the machine stops. This is the Ethical Podcast, where we explore human experiences. Stay critical, stay curious, stay united, and don't let anything and anyone grind you down. We, the people, deserve dignity. But in order to get that, we must unite and become one and forget about the distractions that keep us away from one another. Stay in peace, stay in love, blessings, and I'll see you next time. Welcome back again, Ethics Skill Podcast, where we explore human experiences. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do not forget our campaign. We are committed to transform your subscriptions into pro bono programs for mental health. So you can free somebody's mind from their traumas and help them heal just by subscribing. Very simple, and it costs absolutely nothing. Help us through this campaign, and we just want to pay forward, not only to our viewers, but for those that can't afford mental health services. Just remember, the statistics are real. Only 4 out of 10 Americans can afford mental health services. So help us change that. Hopefully, we can move the statistics and perhaps move it from 4 to 5 out of 10 people have good mental health.